Hello and welcome, and this time we have another new free plugin for you. I'll show you what it does, and we'll also look at how it's built in motion for kind of like a watch me work episode, but I've already made it, so I'll try and unpick it for you. But before we go there, a like, a comment and a subscription on our YouTube channel would be much appreciated. Thank you very much. But back to XEffects AutoFlare. Where do you find it? You'll find it in the title browser under XEffects Free. You can see the thumbnail there. Looks exactly like what we've got on here. And it does a flare on a predefined path. Now that path is defined by the two on-screen controls. I can move these up and down, left to right. So if I really want to, the beginning and end, I can get this flare to go right across the top of there, should I want. And you're not limited to just left or right. You can go backwards on there, and you can also go up and down if you really want to do something like that. So it's very flexible, being able to control the path with these on-screen controls on there. Let's put that back onto the T. If we go and have a look at the controls, we've got 9 flares to choose from. Some funky ones. This blend mode, lighten, this is the default way of doing it, because what it does is when it overlays it, it lightens what's underneath, as you would expect a flare to do. You can change that just to prove it's working. If I go stencil alpha, there you go, but we'll leave it on lighten. And then we've got size. Let's just go back to flare 1. We built these, they're about 2K wide, so you can go right, really large on there if you want to, for something that gives you an amazing flare. Might be a bit over the top on there, but it shows you that the flare holds up. They are actually rendered, they're images, so we can't knock off the lines, but there should be enough variety in here to get something that you really want. That size, rotation, we can rotate it. The fade in and fade out time, they are part of the effect. They'll vary as well, because I haven't put build in, build out markers on, because that would affect the movement across. We'll come to that a bit later. Color change, you can adjust the hue to whatever you like on there, and pump up the saturation and the contrast and really go to town on it should you really want to. Let's go back to... How about that? And also the flicker, because sometimes you want a flicker, and we've randomized the opacity, so you can get a flicker every now and then. You can control the flicker on there. So you can download that from our website, completely free, and you can install it. No watermark, nothing. It's yours, and you can do whatever you like with it. Free plugins, well, all our plugins have been proved quite successful over the last couple of months, but we've had this hanging around in a folder for a while, and I thought I'd publish it so everybody can enjoy it. But let's have a look how it's made as well. Okay, so I'm going to open this up in Motion. Now, I've got to confess as well, if you were to open up the one on your system, you're not going to see the files like this, because what we do is we put the industrial name across the layers, and that's to stop people pirating them and putting them in packs and trying to sell them. So we've just got a way of spotting if they appear anywhere. Now it's a title. As always, I've got a group here with the title background that I had that remains untouched. Now that's important, not because we've got any clone layers this time. We haven't got any clone layers, but because of the overlay. So all of this you'll find will overlay actually on there. If I can actually find the, yeah. So the blend mode here, it says lighten. So that's lightening this because it's a 2D effect. This sits on top of there. So it's lightening the background. You can't really see it when you've got the grey holder in there. It looks fairly simple, but if I open it up, we've got quite a lot of behaviours and filters on there. And here are the individual flares. You can see those in the media that we have on there. The way we control those is very simple. We have a rig that just controls the opacity of each one of those. Let's see if I can find it. I think it's in flare selection. Here we go. So you can see all these. They're all on 0 apart from the first one. that's 100% opacity. And then if I go to flare 9, or let's go for a middle one, then you can see that's 100% opacity and the others are 0. One tip here, if you were to add another flare, because there's nothing stopping you modifying this effect or changing it, if you wanted to say add flare 9, add the opacity to this rig, if you add it at 0, then it'll add across all the other presets at 0. And then when you can put it to flare 10, you can put it up to 100%. If you add the opacity of the new flare at 100%, you're going to have to go back through and toggle them all off to 0% in all these presets. So always worth thinking about how you're going to add an asset to a rig, so you don't have to go through each step by step and change it. Right, so that's the flare selection as an on-screen control, and you've got some sliders up here which we'll come to, because this is where the clever bit happens, and we've got the on-screen controls on here. Now I like to put a layer in there as a kind of like a dummy layer. So what we've got is we've got this checkerboard which is toggled off, but on top of the checkerboard are 2 on-screen controls. That's the start, which you can see here, and the end, you can see there. And the idea is that the flare goes from one of the controls to the other. Let's just see if I can highlight those 2. Goes to the other. And let's just prove it by actually moving one. Yeah, and you can see that's bang on. So how do you go about controlling a ramp between 2 on-screen controls? And it's one of those things where it looks easy, but it's a lot harder to work out. But let's go through it, and I'll try and explain. We start off with a ramp, and that ramp, we've got 2 of them on the flares. So that's ramp X and ramp Y. As you can see here, ramp X and ramp Y. Don't worry about the curvature or anything. But what we have done is we have put the 2 values, the start value and end value, we've put those into rigs. So the start value will go to 1, so that's widget slider X, and the end value will go to the other, widget slider X end. Now, if we look up here, there are 4 rigs. So that's the X start, X end, Y start, and Y end. It's a bit complicated, but if you have a look at the slider, it's actually rigged for the full width of the screen. So that's minus 960 pixels to plus 960 pixels. If you remember from my previous motion tutorials, I've said if you start building plugins, you'll get very familiar with multiples of 1920, 1080, halves, quarters, etc. The numbers keep popping up all over the place, 540, etc. But this is actually a rig of the X position across the whole of the whole of the frame. Now, would you want it going over the whole of the frame? Possibly not. But if you don't tap in the exact numbers, then the on-screen control won't line up exactly with the flare. Okay, so that's minus 960 to plus 960. Then what I've done is added a behavior to a rig, which I found that out a couple of years ago and just completely blew my mind, because it's just like another level on top of another level of what you can do in motion. So that links to the center of the on-screen control X. You've got to do it in 2 steps. You can't just say X and Y because they're different pixel dimensions. So just to run through that again, let's run through it the other way around this time. So we've got an on-screen control. That's on there. That you move that left, right. That's actually a poke filter, which you can see there. And we've got the X and Y on the start. Let's look at the X value. That X value is linked to a rig, because you can put a behavior on a rig. And that rig goes from minus 960 to plus 960. And you can see there, minus 427.87. That's the value of the start poke. And then in that rig, we have the flare start value, which is actually the beginning of this ramp. And that second one, the end value, is the X end, which goes to another one, which is fed by the X of the end poke. Whew. Have we got there? I mean, I have to say, I had to stop this and go back and check how I did it because I forgot. It's a bit complicated. It's a bit of another way round. It's almost a backwards way of doing things that you normally program a plugin on there. But what it does give you, it gives you these two controls that enable you to position the flare any way you like on the screen. And that's really about it on there. As I said before, this will change. Let's just go through here. This randomize is the flicker. So just to get a bit of random flicker into the flares, I added that to the opacity of the top level, and you can see it just says, apply to it, add and subtract, and then you publish the controls of that if you want a bit of a kind of more organic looking flare on there. And we can go into the project. You can see the flicker amounts are down here. It's set to 0 by default. Okay, let's go back to Final Cut Pro 10 and just refresh ourselves with this. So now you know how to build a ramp between two on-screen controls and create a plugin. So this has been AutoFlare, and I hope you've enjoyed it. We hope to do more in the future, and we've had a really good response from people saying that they like the tutorials about looking how something is made. I mean, I've learned something through the last one because I didn't really realise that you could program a ramp between on-screen controls. That opens up a lot of possibilities for plugin manufacturing on there. And that's about it. I hope you enjoyed it. We've got quite a few more coming in the future. As I've said before, please like, subscribe, a comment's always welcome, and hope to see you on the new one. Don't forget to download the free plugin AutoFlare. We'll leave the download link right below this. Bye-bye.